Hey everyone, Pastor Dave Stahl here, coming to you from Ashaway in Hopkinton, Rhode Island. Honored to be your virtual tour guide for this part of your historical tour of the Newport Seventh-day Baptist Church. Our story today starts like this. To put it simply, the Newport Seventh-day Baptist Church was established in 1671 when 7 people signed a covenant to form it. Now, 5 of them had been members of the Newport First Baptist Church and left it to sign this new covenant. Meanwhile, other members of that Baptist church that were living over in western Rhode Island colony, a day's trip away by boat, had also started keeping the seventh-day Sabbath. It was not until 5 years later that these Sabbath keepers joined the church when in Newport as refugees during the First War with Native Americans. Thus, from early on, the church was growing in 2 locations, on an island in Narragansett Bay, and over here on the edge of the wooded frontier on land purchased from the natives. So as the church grew in these 2 locations, Newport pastor William Hiscox and others traveled often to Westerly, this area over here, the western part of the colony, where he preached, baptized, and brought members into the church. I have to show you this picture. We keep this here in the sanctuary, in the foyer rather, at the First Hopkinton Church. This is Pastor William Hiscox's son, Reverend Thomas Hiscox, and kind of gives you the warm fuzzies when you look at this guy. Known for some remarkable achievements and community contributions, as well as being a great minister. These were some really formidable men. That was Thomas Hiscox. His father was Pastor William Hiscox, and he was working in both these churches. And this pattern of extending the covenant geographically had begun even before that with a group of people over in New London, Connecticut, who had contacted the Newport Church because of their interest in the seventh-day Sabbath and in believers' baptism. So Reverend Hiscox and other members had made the risky trip by ship down the Long Island Sound many times to baptize and nurture these distant members of the church. A Westerly member married one of them, and eventually a Newport leader moved out there to provide nurture and stability for that branch of the church. In between visits, as you could imagine, frequent letters went back and forth between the groups. But it was the group in Westerly, the group right here in the area where I'm coming to you from. That group in Westerly, now called Hopkinton, was growing the fastest. And finally, a Newport leader moved there, authorized to preach and to baptize, and that portion of the church was free to make their own decisions about how they would operate and discipline the members there. Judging by that picture of Reverend Thomas Hiscox, they had no trouble with the discipline part. They kept records, and they voted, and they received new members into the Newport Church. However, all major decisions and all communications with individuals and groups outside of the covenant relationship were decided when the 2 parts of the church came together twice a year, spring in Newport, fall over here in Hopkinton, for worship, communion, and business. Finally, in 1708, 37 years after the founding of the Newport Church, the 2 parts of the church voted separately on the decision to become distinct churches, but still in association and entire communion as heretofore. That was a quote. They said they were, quote, in the same faith and order, and continued to be one fellowship. In other words, there came a time where the 2 churches were geographically far enough apart and both strong enough that they thought they needed to separate. But they wanted to make sure that it was that people understood they were still in covenant with each other, that it was a peaceful agreement. They weren't separating out of division. They were separating for their expansion. For the next 90-some years, before the establishment of the General Conference, these 2 strong sister churches modeled continuing growth in extended covenant relationship, still joining together for their yearly meetings, for worship, for communion, and for consultation on all sorts of topics and issues.